I am glad that in Dad's prayer there, he mentioned the relevance of what we're studying to sort of common everyday life. But that's a real purpose of what we wanted. I haven't, as we went into this, wanted to talk more about it a little bit here just at the beginning. But this series of lessons, and I think a lot of times stories from the Old Testament can be even from the New Testament. We talked about this with miracles. It can be sort of hard to grasp. And I think we sometimes bog ourselves down in the sort of minutia of how things happen. And we forget that the main purpose that we should take from is what can I learn from this? All right. We talked about this a few years ago with miracles, and I have no idea how a withered arm can be healed. And I don't want, but I think we could probably sit here all night and debate it, and we would talk about it forever, and then we would not be any smarter than we were an hour earlier, but we've not really taken anything from it as well. And so I hope that as we discuss these lessons over this series, that you'll our main focus will be the lessons that we can take from it. I want to start with a question for all of you all, and I'll even open it up for you to tell me if it's a funny story. You can tell it. If it's a scary story, you can probably tell that too. Have you ever been chased by something? Ever been chased by something? A lot of heads bobbing up and down. Chased by Ben. All right. Dogs, cows, bulls, maybe a bear one time. It feels like that's something that you probably should know that answer. Like chickens. That wasn't near as cool as the bear one, but I guess chickens work, Tom. Right. Did you let the deer go and let the bear get the deer? So it's like eat him instead. So I get that. Will. Other football players, yeah. And they all come with bad intentions too. So Maria, I feel like you had a story. You started shaking your head immediately. So a cat. All right. A bear and a mother duck. I got you. So when you think about the scenario of when you are being chased or pursued, there's probably this sort of adrenaline rush, and you're in a hurry, and you're just trying to get out of the way of the bear or the duck or whatever it might would be, right? And then after the fact, we sort of reassess, right? And you think, wow, a bear, that probably could have done some serious damage, or a duck. And I don't know that I want to mention this in church 20 years from now when it comes up, we probably think about all of those sort of things, right? But the main thing that we're probably thinking is, I wish this thing, whatever it was, wasn't chasing me. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is what we'll title Crossing the Sea. But I want you to consider the fact that what we'll talk about this evening is one group being pursued by another group. And so when we talk about the Red Sea crossing, it's certainly a dramatic moment, but you all just told me dramatic moments in your lives, right? I find it interesting that not a single person said a police officer. I don't know. Nobody ever been chased by a police officer on the interstate or through town or anything like that. But it's a dramatic scene, as it were. And there's a few things that we see there within it. We see power within this story. And we'll see fear within this story. We'll see faith and ultimately deliverance within this story. And truth be told, on some scale, you saw the same thing in the story that you just told. There was power in the animal that was pursuing, right? And there was fear in your eyes, and so on down the line. And when you got out of it, in some way, you had been delivered, whatever it was. And so this is not just a sort of old Testament vacation Bible school type story, but I think there's a practical lesson for us to look at today. We are going to be in Exodus chapter 14. Everything will be up here on the screen. I actually don't think we have any verses outside of Exodus chapter 14 tonight either. Everything will be up here, but if you want to have your Bible, that'll be helpful if we need to refer back or whatever it might be. Boo, do you care to read Exodus 14, verses 5 through 9? And I believe we have 2 slides on the screen. All right. So just as a return back to what we have talked about, is during this stretch, we've seen 9 plagues inflicted on Egypt. And then the story last week was there would be a 10th plague. And what was the 10th plague to be? Death of the firstborn. And we later read in the story that it was the firstborn child, but firstborn what else? Animals, firstborn sort of everything. So it's a big deal. And so you could be spared of that by doing what action? Putting blood on the doorpost, which is what the Jewish people did, the Israelites did, but not what the Egyptians did. And so then they flee. And I think that's where we left off. It told them, he said to have your, they ate a meal, but it was kind of like a fast food meal, as it were, right? They were dressed and they had their shoes on and they were ready to go wherever it was going to take them. There's a verse right here that I want you, or a sentence right here. It says, and the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. I just want to stop there because that is repeated multiple times throughout Exodus when talking about the plagues. And so there was this plague that would come, whatever it would be, and we see 10 of them. And then each time Pharaoh would harden his heart. Right? And so when we think about that, hardening of hearts is something that can happen to us today. But I think a good interpretation for what we're seeing here is there's a level of stubbornness that comes to Pharaoh as well. And when do we sometimes get the most stubborn? When we're the most wrong. That's probably true. I'm the most wrong, but I want to be right. When someone tells me I can't do something, when we're angry, and sometimes stubbornness is a secondary emotion that comes out of another emotion there as well. And so we see that here as well. Pharaoh's stubbornness comes despite multiple examples of what happens when he got stubborn. Because it would appear to me at any time during the 10 plagues, he could have said, listen, let's resolve this issue. Could have done that after one plague, right? How many of us, though, have ever had one thing happen with the person and we just, instead of fixing it, we get mad about it, right? And then now there's 2 things. And it's, well, I'm not apologizing to her. And she's at home right now saying, I'm not apologizing to him. And now there's 3, now the ball is rolling. And now we don't even know why we're mad. We're just all mad and stubborn about it. We can relate to this here as well. And so when we get into what we're seeing here, why do you think Pharaoh, I know it says that God hardened his heart, but why do you think Pharaoh changed his mind after letting the Israelites go? You're losing. So the initial sadness of the deaths, the loss, then it's anger and taking it out and vengeance on the Israelites. Ben? Just swoop right back in and pick them up. Absolutely. Israel seems to be, they're trapped in this story. There's desert on one side, there's sea on the other. The Egyptians are behind them. They're just kind of wandering around there, as it were. And so now, instead of letting them saunter around out there forever, let's just go back and get them and bring them back in. Now, if he does that, if he brings them back in, do you think, and this is no way of knowing, we're just guessing, do you think he would have greeted them with hugs and kisses? Probably not in that situation right there. But we can relate to this sort of bringing us back. So I want to think about for a second, what are some modern, let's use the word here, pharaohs that would pull us back? What are some things that pull us back when we have decided it's time to move on? What pulls us back? Friends, people that we are acquainted with quite often pull us back into what we had been doing. Bad habits. And truthfully, sin is like anything else, it's a habit, right? And there's good habits and there's bad habits. What else? Family. Any other things that politics can? What is it? No willpower, or struggling with willpower to sort of get over the top. So there's all these things that can pull us back. Yeah. Uh-huh. It does. It really does. And so those are the kind of things that will pull us back in. So when we think about it, how do we then recognize that these, and I'm glad you used the word habits on because I had it right up here as well. But how do we recognize when we're being tempted to go back into the old habits? Because it's not always like a flashing neon light that says, do this, do this, do this. How do we recognize when we're being tempted? Right.
And whenever I have this, I just need to just stay away.
Uh-huh. Makes sense? What else? Uh-huh. You sort of lose the balance that maybe should be there. What else? What are some other things that are recognizing? Uh-huh. Right.
I think you see, or if you keep it on, honestly, I think you'll see your prayer habits will change, maybe your Bible study habits will change, because you're doing this and you don't want nothing to remind you that it's wrong.
Right.
And so you'll kind of shy away from it because you know it's wrong.
Uh-huh.
I think that will hinder your prayer, change your prayer.
Could be. Any others? You know, about smoking a cigar, that would do nothing for me. I have no interest in it, but for Ben, it is. But there may be a habit that I would face that might not challenge Ben. And so I think we have to be honest with ourselves, right? When it comes to, what kind of things, to use a sort of modern psychological word, what kind of things would trigger us to use that word, right? Because there are legitimately things that sort of pull us back in and some things that don't really do that at all. So what are some ways for us to be effective in avoiding this kind of thing? You kind of already answered it, but what are some ways that we can effectively avoid changes of heart? True. Uh-huh. Sure. Uh-huh. That's true. You may have to dissociate yourself. Yeah. Uh-huh. True. A lot of times even as Christians, we're benefit from, routine and that's a habit as well, right? And so those are habits. I've talked with Dad about this, and I've set aside time that I work on, sermons or work on lessons, and I just kind of know when that time is going to be. Well, I'm not speaking this Sunday, and so I haven't worked on it. And last night or Monday night, Will had a football game, but last night we just was kind of home, and it was, it was sort of like, well, I'm not doing it. What else could you do, or whatever? but you're better suited to sort of stay in those habits of study or prayer or just helping others, or something like that. And so I think we can relate to this story. Let's go a little bit further. This is Exodus chapter 14, verses 10 through 14, because if we're talking about chasing, what we're seeing right here is the sort of fear in the chase here as we go. Jill, do you care to read this one? I think there's a second slide as well.